Hi, it's Kirsty. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about my experience with health-related OCD. This is my longest standing theme. It goes way back to when I was in my late teens, actually, long before I had any inkling that it could have been OCD. I put it down to just being some kind of anxiety rather than being OCD, and I didn't actually realise that quite a lot of my behaviours were compulsive. I didn't know about any of that, but it was something that affected me on and off throughout my 20s as well. It first started off when I went to university. I started having panic attacks after trying marijuana for the first time, and it didn't really agree with me. It made me feel quite paranoid, and I started basically having a panic attack, and then I started having a panic attack randomly the next day, and they would just come on randomly, and I think some would diagnose this maybe as panic disorder or something, or generalized anxiety. But it kind of spiraled for me from being panic attacks, feeling like I was going to have a heart attack or something, to kind of what they would call, I suppose, dissociation or derealization, where I just felt completely spaced out. So that was my first experience of kind of thinking about health-related issues. I became more fixated on health-related issues, mainly surrounding having cancer in my late 20s. I think a trigger for this was losing my mum to cancer when I was 25, and then my grandmother was diagnosed with it when I was, I think, about 30. But I would quite often find something to fixate on and then Google it and get myself worked up and find a reason to go to the doctors about it. One particularly bad time was after going to the dentist. The dentist was very concerned about dark shadows on my x-ray, which signifies an infection. But he forwarded my case to the hospital of dentistry, but I misunderstood a lot of it and filled in a lot of blanks, and came to the conclusion that I had secondary cancer on my jaw, I created the story that I had an unknown primary cancer. This was just before going on holiday, so throughout the whole holiday I couldn't stop thinking about the fact that it was my last holiday. I think I'd only been with my partner maybe about a year at this point as well, so I was thinking, I've not been with him for that long. This is unfair. And it went so deep with me that I was starting to think about what I would want my end of life plan to be. I had created this whole story in my mind and I couldn't stop thinking about it. But unlike most other OCD themes, with this you do actually get your answer in the end to the question. So you, after various tests, going to the dentist in my case in this situation, or whether it's going to a doctor, you get a negative result or whatever it may be. So you get that reassurance, but then something else crops up that you notice. Your glands are up, there's numbness on your arm, and this was kind of how it went forward with me then. It would be like a numb patch on my leg, a white mark on one of my tonsils, a mole that I didn't like the look of, a lump on my tonsil. So I would find myself constantly checking, sort of looking down my throat and in my mouth in the mirror with my phone camera. I would be regularly checking glands, checking my body, depending on what the fixation was at the time or what the symptom I felt like I had. I would be Googling it and learning all about the various different things that it could be and the various different treatments there might be for it. So it just went continuously on like that for me, and it was particularly for me on the run up to going on holidays as well. I think it was that kind of build up of sort of being so kind of stressed, I suppose, in my daily life from various anxieties and from having a stressful job at the time as well, I put so much pressure on myself to enjoy going on holidays and relax, and it's good for your health and all of that, that I would find something to worry about with my health that I wouldn't be able to prove until I got back from holiday. So it seemed to be holidays that seemed to trigger it. And then when I was one time when I was about to go on a holiday, when I was able to see a doctor about something before the holiday, just after that was when our OCD kicked in really badly for me. And of course, you can't prove love and our OCD. So the journey with health OCD started to improve for me after our OCD kicked in, and that was when I became very unwell, I suppose, with my mental health. And that was when I started to learn more about OCD and realised that all of these things that I was doing, checking my body, Googling, constantly asking people about health concerns, and constantly checking that my friends and family are okay health-wise, these were actually all compulsions, which I didn't realise. So the more I became educated, the more I could start to let go a little bit. And through learning more about OCD as well, I could learn more about my kind of intolerance of uncertainty, I suppose. And that was a big issue with the health OCD. So learning that if I found something that made me a bit uncomfortable, maybe I'll see how I feel the next day about it, and then the next day, and then give it a couple of weeks. Unless, of course, it was something that I'd never seen before. Obviously, nothing is black and white here. But it was giving myself a bit more time before I looked into it. And what I quite often found was that I was no longer concerned about it, and little things that I would notice, I don't know, 3 years ago that were really bugging me, I can now look back and think, well, it didn't kill me. Well, the specks, the dark specks that I noticed on the whites of my eyes, for example, that I was fixated on for a while. Something else, in addition to uncertainty, that helped me work through my health fixations in OCD was, I suppose, understanding that none of us are guaranteed a long life. None of us are even guaranteed tomorrow. So it was learning to stop awfulizing about it if I did find myself with some kind of serious health condition or concern, especially if it was something that could potentially be curable, but to sort of learn to stop seeing it as awful, see it as a big concern and, of course, scary, but not awful. Again, as I've talked about in various videos that I've done and other people have, awful, if we look at that as the absolute worst thing possible, endless suffering until the end of time. Even terminal cancer isn't endless suffering. I mean, obviously, I never want to downplay this, especially considering one of the people I love most in the world, or two of them actually, I lost to that. But to see it, if I was to have it, to learn to not see it as the most awful thing that could possibly happen, has really, really helped me. But also to dispute how unhelpful it is for me to continuously be Googling and worrying about that kind of thing, rather than enjoying the time that I do have here, this limited, period of consciousness that I have right now. It's this. So better to spend it enjoying it rather than Googling and constantly waiting for the next thing that crops up that makes me doubt how healthy I am. I recently did a video about deservingness and fairness, and I feel like that is relevant when it comes to health OCD, because some of the irrational beliefs behind it would be maybe something like, it would be awful if I was diagnosed with cancer, it would be so unfair at my age, and that would have been, I think, well, certainly one of the things that I would have upset myself more about thinking about all of it would be that I don't deserve it, any unfairness. And as I spoke about in my other video, is that firstly, fairness, well, deservingness and fairness, just simply, it's just not, it's irrational. They aren't things. Children are born with extreme life-limiting disabilities. Babies are stillborn, haven't even had a chance to breathe any air outside of their mother's body. So if fairness was a thing, then that wouldn't happen. So that's another way of kind of helping to take out some of the suffering with health OCD. Again, is letting go of the, it would be unfair if I had this. I couldn't stand it. Would be maybe something else that would be driving the fears, that irrational belief that you couldn't stand it. Because when it comes to real life situations, you kind of don't have a choice. You have to just stand it. The whole world doesn't swallow you up. If a family member or you were diagnosed with something, you would follow through and do the practical things that you need to do. So you would stand it. So again, this is another irrational belief. But I hope this video can offer some help if you are suffering from health OCD in terms of talking through what the compulsions might be, even if it just offers the feeling of not being alone with it, makes you feel less isolated because of it. I think it's quite a common one for people to struggle with, and even those people who don't have OCD, it's still, their health concerns is still a big thing. I mean, the whole world is currently kind of, this is the whole world's every day at the moment, I suppose, isn't it? But yeah, thank you for watching, and I hope it has been of some help to you.